And then when they told, I had no idea that it was happening. It happened, it was done, it was over, and that was that. So, like Preston is saying, I think we as people of color often get conditioned to live with that madness. Because if you rock the boat, you, like you said, you get canceled, you get dismissed, you get mistreated more, your value gets depreciated. Like, let me play a game for a second. And I'll go there. So, Preston, when someone decides that they want to play, how many times do you get pushed into the submissive Asian boy role? And then for the other two gentlemen, how many times do you all get pushed into the big dick brown boy role? This is the thing. Look at the, so much of who we are gets turned into, you know, even the subtle things are based on what color we are, or based in what perceived perceptions we are, regardless of if you know anything about us.
Yeah, if I may, like, I can't tell you how many times I had to analyze myself and be like, am I doing this because I enjoy doing this or because I've been conditioned to? A lot of times when I've been non-consensually groped or grabbed, always to the crotch. Once in a while, that's not even an issue, but it's like you get conditioned to expect it and that it's okay to keep happening. And you don't, there's a point where you don't stop it. And then when you do realize that you are being violated and then stop people, then you are seen as a problem because you're not complying with what is considered normal. And that's a narrative that needs to change somehow. In that we always talk about consent violations in context of, honestly, the dominant cis white space. We don't talk about it in any other format. And I just don't know how to stop it, honestly, other than speaking up.
Thank you. Thank you all of you for sharing. Yeah, I mean, so I think the common thread in a lot of your responses is, I think, yeah, and just to sort of put things in perspective for our listeners, basically it seems like when we're encountering these microaggressions and these sort of issues that affect us, especially as individuals of color and other marginalized individuals, like it seems like in general, the way that we're thinking about these issues are within the context and the framework of basically our personhood being violated because of these larger patterns and these layers and layers of experience, right? And it's interesting because I think, I think implicit, and especially Alexandra's and Preston's story, is that there's a level of self-correcting and there's a level of self-editing. And I think, Shadi, you mentioned this as well. But like, can you speak a little bit more to what you had to do as as a result of this bullying? So like, how have you changed your behavior in order to avoid this bullying? If you could speak to that, please.
Well, I can definitely jump in a little bit here, and just to kind of, I think it's really interesting that you mentioned this notion of self-correction or self-silencing, really self-censorship, because it reflects two things, I think, that are really tough for a lot of people to realize. One is, the fact that our entire society and all of our institutions, right? And I'm not just talking about police. I'm not just talking about the carceral state. I'm not just talking about medical racism. I'm not just talking about housing discrimination. I'm talking about the day-to-day casual encounters we have with people. That is all completely tainted by these internalizations of white supremacy that people have. And we ourselves also internalize this white supremacy and internalize this, phobia of those who have really no, we internalize these systems because it's how we've been conditioned. And, obviously I speak from a position of some privilege as somebody who's Asian American, somebody who's college educated, somebody who works in an industry where it's not very queer phobic. But it's important to recognize that we need to speak up on behalf of those who cannot speak for themselves. And I think it's incredibly important for us to use our positions and our pedestals to do that. The second thing is that, and I'll get back to that in a little bit because I want to answer your question directly, Ali, as well. But I think one of the things that people don't recognize about microaggressions, and for example, these comments that people made to Alexandra, right? These assumptions that people make about Shadi, right? These sort of odd encounters that we have where people other us and exoticize us or dehumanize us because we don't fit into, or we either fit into or don't fit into this particular perception. The Anti-Defamation League has what's called a pyramid of hate, which is essentially an escalating set of steps where somebody who engages in microaggressions, somebody who engages in biased behavior, somebody who engages in name calling, somebody who engages in some of the bullying behaviors that we've talked about over the course of this whole panel, are also complicit in the gradual creep up towards actual violence that directly impacts people, as well as actual genocide that literally destroys and annihilates entire peoples from the planet. And it's really hard to deal with some of these things because you need to let some of these things pass by. You have to let some of these things be water under the bridge because of the fact that if you don't, you literally cannot survive. And so I find it really interesting, Ali, when you say like, how have we kind of recovered? I think it's a matter of survival, right? And I think one of the things that a lot of white people in the kink community don't realize, that a lot of cis people in the kink community don't realize, that a lot of men in the kink community don't realize, is that for people who are multiply marginalized and for those who don't have the ability to speak up, they are literally surviving and literally hanging on for dear life. Because if they do speak up, they're totally decimated. If they don't speak up, they're able to finally get by one more day in this world. And just like Alexandra said earlier, right? Whatever happened to me the other day, that's a normal goddamn Tuesday for me, right? That's a normal walk in the park for me, right? And it's so remarkable, I think, that all four of us, right, we've overcome so much over the last few years, over our entire lives, to be able to come to this moment. And what we need, and I think what we have done, right, is to get to the point where we've overcome our own experience, I can speak for myself here, where I've overcome my own experiences, but we need to have others amplify and uplift and center the experiences, not just of us, right? Because we've done plenty, we do plenty of talking, we do plenty of sharing, and we love each other, right? Because we're all good, dear friends, but we need to think more about the people in the corner who are silent, who can't speak up, the people who yet again have seen another hate crime or another murder and feel even more silenced and unable to escape. And that's the whole reason why we all ran for titles in the first place, is it not?
Yeah, thank you, Preston. But if you could speak just specifically also to your experience, like have you altered your behavior specifically because of all the things that have happened, if that's okay?
Yeah. I mean, what I will say right now is, first of all, there's two things, right? First of all, I'm no longer at an event unless I'm with my people. And by my people, I mean my trans folks. I mean, my dear people of color who are always there for me. I am not in a position where I have the luxury to just go to an event by myself anymore, or to, just hang out in a space where I know I'm going to be unwelcome and considered somebody who shouldn't even be there in the first place. But as I said just now, right, it's important to be that voice for others who don't have that opportunity. And so one of the things that I've done is at mirubberxx.com/spend-guide, I have a guide that is for people who are new to the kink community, people who are marginalized or oppressed in the kink community. It's the first ever honest look at how these kink events are performing when it comes to how many assaults have taken place at your kink event, how many instances of ableism or transphobia or misogynoir have taken place at your kink event. Do you have a code of conduct? Do you enforce that code of conduct? Do you have an anti-harassment policy that actually keeps people safe at your events? And I'm really excited because a lot of people have reached out to me sharing that either they're new to the kink community or they're marginalized. They've never had something like this kind of guide that helps them make decisions about who actually deserves their money. Because let me be honest with you, right? Most of these events, most of these spaces, most of these businesses do not deserve a single penny of our already lower income, of our already harder earned money and blood and sweat and tears. So for me personally, I have dealt with it by essentially closing myself off to those events that I do not believe are doing a good job of keeping people safe. And I am either shining a light on those events that are, or I am shaming publicly with this tea those events that are not. And I've rankled a lot of feathers. I've made a lot of people very angry, including people of color. But it's a job that needs to be done because too many people who are new to the community, too many people who are marginalized in the community are facing rampant abuse, rampant harassment, rampant violence in our spaces and in our events, and nobody wants to do a single fucking thing about it in those positions of power.
I can speak to changing behavior because I'll go there and I'm about to piss some people off. As a Black person, you sometimes have your older relatives who, because of the time period they were born in and the oppression that they dealt with, that oppression becomes generational. And so it becomes this thing where in order to be better, you need to assimilate. So for example, don't wear your hair natural. Always, be this, be that. For example, as a Black kid, you get the talk. You get the talk on how to behave around white people. And I'm certain that, that same talk happened in your households, but because of because of some of the nasty negative history that have happened with Black people in this country, and even walking while Black, talking while Black, standing while Black, shopping while Black, just being Black. I speak about the fact that I grew up a young Black boy on the southwest side of Chicago with two young parents. My parents were teen parents. According to statistics, I wasn't supposed to make it to 16. I made it to 16. I wasn't supposed to make it to 21. I made it to 21. I wasn't supposed to make it to 25. I made it to 25. Then it was being 35. And then at 35, I decided to change the game and came out as trans. So now let's add the next layer to it. I turned 48 in December. According to statistics, I'm supposed to be dead because the average age for a Black trans woman or a trans woman of color is 35 years old. I'm supposed to be dead, according to statistics. But I've managed to do the things to defy those odds in changing how I navigate the world. And like Preston was saying, baby, I'm going to stand right there in your face because I want you to see me when you say something stupid. I want you to be aware that I'm looking at you when you have the audacity and the unmitigated gall to make those sort of statements. I want you to be aware. So when you start practicing those isms and ists, I can look at you sideways and literally As to quote my mother, what the hell is wrong with you and what's your major malfunction?